Welcome back, YouTube. Going to be doing another 1 hour grind here at Rhutum, Elvia Rhutum. Gonna first sell my loot real quick from the last time I was here, and then come back and we'll do the hour. And while we're doing it, we'll also listen to Josh Strife because he is the man, and he is just very pleasing to listen to, honestly. Something about his voice, just kind of soothing. Go ahead and turn that on here soon. But hope everyone is doing good and having a good weekend. I know for me it's been a pretty busy week. Pretty busy. Ooh. Watching the Clemson and Alabama game right now. It's pretty close. Oof, buried the three. Yikes. All right, 8 billion. Nice. I should start trying to get my but my pen accessory. What in the world was that? Oh, he got the rebound? All right, let me repair my gear. Go back to Rhutum. And he shoots that ball weird. Yeah, I don't think Clemson's going to win this now. Yikes. I don't know how that's a foul, but all right. Interesting. Crap. I always forget to turn that off. Invalid. Invalid. Cuckoo for Cuckoo Puffs. Alright, so let me turn that on. I think I should also do this too, huh? Might as well. Oh, wait. I can only... come on, bro. Leave me alone, ogre. Or whatever you are. Maybe you're not an ogre. I don't know what you are. I'm sorry. Uh, okay, yeah, I guess I can only do one of those at a time. I'm a noob. It's okay. Uh, so that. Crap, I need the church buffs. Ugh. I mean, I probably don't need it, but can't be kidding me. Is it really worth it? I don't know. Like I need to at least go get it real quick. Maybe if I could drive my horse. Come on. Come on, I'm drifting. I'm drifting. How's that a common foul? Yeah, I don't know if I really agree with that call. I wouldn't say that. I don't know. That's oof. It always sucks when referees influence the game like that. I definitely don't think that was a foul. I think it was a foul on the other player, honestly. Oh, oh. Gotta make the threes. You gotta make the threes. All right, now I got the church buffs. 4 hours. Should be good enough. For a while, at least. He's a 75% free throw shooter, but he's 3 for 7 tonight. Can't handle the pressure. I mean, 6 points down. Anything's possible. Get 2 quick threes and go ahead and already be up. Oh, 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 he's wide open. Gosh, dude. Too many fouls, man. They really made this sport very sissy. I mean, you can't even do anything. How is that a foul? Like, he literally got the ball the whole. I mean, I wait. His free throw is 53%. Dude, his shot is so weird. I guess it's probably why he's a 50% free throw shooter, huh? Dude, you need to go and work in on your free throw shooting. Jeez. 50%? Gosh, he missed both. That is, I mean, to be a college D1 basketball star, like, you would think that your free throw shooting would be at least a little bit better. Oh, buckets, dude. This man is over here spitting fire. Ooh, he is spitting fire. My gosh. He's like, yeah, hold my beer. Don't kill my horse. All right. So buffs now. That. Jeez. Okay. Now I think we're probably ready. That took forever. Bruh, leave me alone. Leave your boy alone. Oh yeah, I need to look at my crystals real quick. Um, so boom. Let's see one. Oh, I need my beast drought. What? Oh my gosh. Like I don't even know where I'm getting attacked at. Let's see. Beast drought and 4. Yeah. Yo, leave my horse alone, please. Hey, leave my horse alone, please. Dude, what are you doing, bruh? Leave my horse alone. Oh my gosh. All right. Okay, I think I'm ready. We're gonna play this. Wait.
Times have you heard or said, I won't play that game,
All right.
it's pay to win. Most of the
It's pay to
Western
win,
audience
baby.
of this video are probably nodding along and agreeing you hate pay to win, but Eastern gamers might be a little more confused at the hostility toward pay to win, maybe even embracing some aspects of it. But even more strangely than the cultural differences, we're probably not actually all thinking of the same exact thing. So what actually is pay to win? Because we all kind of roughly know what it is, it's just where you spend more money and get more power. But that's just one aspect. It's not a defined thing. And many games exist on a scale of pay to win, from none to all of it. But what about the games in the middle? When does the switch happen? Are there games you'd consider pay to win which I wouldn't? And what is the limit gamers should accept on pay to win design? And then, how does the existence of pay-to-win mechanics affect game development? And how does it affect gaming culture across the world? And if pay-to-win is a scale of severity, could we take several popular games and put them on this scale to see how they compare to each other? Let's find out. Welcome, I'm Josh Strive-Hayes. I started gaming back on the Amiga 500 in the early 90s with games like Midnight Resistance and Castle Master. Then I discovered arcade with games like House of the Dead and Time Crisis, and then I fell
God, I'm
into
about
the
to
world
die.
of MMORPGs and spent tens of thousands of hours chopping trees and virtually fishing. And over that time, I've seen games change a lot. You probably have too. So in this video, I'll be looking at the three main areas of what pay-to-win
Dude, what is
is.
going
Starting
on?
with the foundations of why it's appealing, then the designs which make it possible, and finally, the impact those designs have on the quality of the games
Jeez,
overall.
bro.
And then we'll look at the pay-to-win scale and
Is my
see how we
potions
can
even
rank
on?
different games
Like,
against
hello?
each other. But first, this video is sponsored by a very special guest. Me. The good people over at U2's decided they needed something to put on their second monitor, so for a limited time only, I am available in plushie form. Featuring a little waistcoat and an embroidered mug with a D20 on it, I am 9 inches, which is also the height of this plushie. Available from March 22nd, I will only be on sale for 2 weeks and then I will be gone. So if you want me sat watching your second monitor with you, chilling with your pets, or just hanging with the crew, this is your only chance. Once you own me, I am yours to do with as you will. You can display me in the living room, or tuck me into your bed, or put me in a jar by the radiator. I cannot stop you, even though I wish I could. Go to u2s.com and find me there. Check the video description or pinned comment for a link. And remember, after 2 weeks, I will be gone. Jokes aside, being made into a limited run plushie is one of the most awesome and surreal things to ever happen in my YouTube career so far. And that's thanks to you watching the videos. So thank you very much. Back to what is pay to win. Now, I've already covered the evolution of games and anti-player design,
Evolution?
dark patterns,
It's a
and
unique way of saying
egregious
it, I guess.
monetization in the video What Went Wrong with Gaming. That video was a broad overview of the entire process, and this video is more specifically about what pay-to-win actually is, which games have it, which don't, and why not all pay-to-win games are equal. Essentially, I want to try and create a scale, from least to most pay-to-win. But in trying to create this 10-stage scale, I ran into a problem. There may be things games do which rate both low and high, or even just in the middle, or high but not low. So instead of a sliding placement, consider this scale a sort of checklist of increasing severity. And the more boxes a game ticks and the further along these boxes are, the more pay-to-win the game is. Let's start with the foundation, why it's appealing. And this begins with defining the terms and some examples. Pay to win is a 3-word phrase, meaning it's open to a world of interpretation. There will be someone out there, probably watching this video, ready to make the extremely pedantic argument that you need to buy the game before you play it, so technically all games are pay to win. Or only people with enough money can afford gaming consoles or free time to play them, so that's a form of payment. I get where these arguments are coming from. I do, but I also feel that they're often made in bad faith. So let's just standardize this. Purchasing the console or the PC, the game itself, and having the free time to play the game is not going to factor in. What I'm interested in is the experience contained within the game itself, once you've bought the base or standard version. I'm also not going to consider illegal methods of gaining power, such as buying gold in MMORPGs from third-party sellers or using botting software to play the game for you. I will, however, count games which sell their own currency through official channels. And finally, we won't be touching too much on arcade games, because yes, Time Crisis is absolutely pay to win if you are bad at it. Just throw more money to get more lives. In fact, all arcade games work this way. So while I will include the arcade lives mechanic later, I'm mostly looking at full releases, home games you have bought or subscribed to, generally giving you full access to them from a home console or PC. Now, the most common argument against or justification for the existence of microtransactions or pay-to-win mechanics that you will hear is you don't need to buy them. Just don't buy them. Ignore them. Play the rest of the game and just don't worry about the pay-to-win aspects. The problem with this argument is the designers absolutely did have to worry about them. And from a creation point of view, for an item or mechanic or system or cosmetic, for anything to be in a cash shop, to be a buyable extra, the designers need to make it worth your money to buy. This means it needs to look cooler or be more useful or be more fun than what is already in the game. CoCarnage made a really good tweet about this exact thing after the release of Dragon's Dogma 2, which is a game we'll touch on later. Making anything in your game optional and buyable means you need to make it desirable, which means there is now a desirable thing not included in the game that you're already playing, so the game is very slightly worse than it could be. There may be a limited amount of fun items within the game, but more of them available for sale in the cash shop. And while you don't need to buy it if you're a smart gamer, once you realize they've deliberately kept the game back from being the best experience it could be, it's very hard to ignore that sour taste in your mouth. Game designers are smart, talented people, and if there is something in the cash shop, one of the reasons it will be hard to ignore is that part of the game will be specifically designed to make you pay attention to it. But before we get to the 10-part scale, let's set the foundation of why we want to win and why other people matter in this equation a lot. Imagine you start playing a single-player game and realize, hey, if you give the game makers some more money, you will win the game. So you boot up your game, enter your credit card information, and boom, you get the final cutscene and credits roll. You've not even played the game, but well done, you won. This is the equivalent of using a level skip cheat on a game you've never played and thinking, yay, I beat the game. I don't think any of us would consider this pay to win, but why not? You're paying and you've won. I think it's because paying to win isn't about paying to skip the challenge of a game. It's about making the challenge of the game easier. But the player still has to go through the motions of completing it, even though it is substantially easier. That way there is still the feeling of, yes, I beat the game. It's not about being given the reward. It's about taking the reward, even though you've paid for the ability to make the reward far easier to get. Game developers want players to feel accomplished, to feel they've achieved something, and skipping the challenge of the game isn't the best way to give that feeling. But taking on a challenge when you are essentially guaranteed to succeed, it's functionally the same as skipping because you know you're going to pass it, but psychologically, it's the same as actually beating it. So we're not looking to remove content, but remove the challenge of that content, because the victory screen is still being earned, and for many, the destination is indeed more important than the journey, but the journey still needs to happen. Now, this mostly applies to single-player games, where pay-to-win does still exist, as we'll see later, but isn't anywhere near as egregious as multiplayer games, because vitally, you need someone else to win against. This is another important foundation point. Once you make a game multiplayer, especially competitive multiplayer, the desire to win is increased many times over, and players want every advantage they can give themselves. Playing for a long time and getting good used to be the standard, but this means companies make money from the original sale and then possibly a monthly subscription, but nothing else. What if you could sell power to the weaker players of your game and then they would be able to defeat the stronger, more skillful players? You'd be directly appealing to the I want to win at all costs crowd, which is a very big crowd. Remember, it's essential, like last time, that you don't remove the content, but the challenge of the content. If a weaker, newer player is being beaten repeatedly by a stronger, more experienced player, then that weaker player will want to get revenge. Maybe they don't have the skill to win on skill alone, or the time needed to learn those skills, but they do have some spare money. So they buy some amazing equipment from the game and tip the odds heavily in their favor. But it's not enough just to take the weaker player's money and then say, well done, you're now better. You need to make sure that that paying weaker player gets to fight their old nemesis and gets to win, so they can see the power they've gained. Now we know, and they are on a certain level also going to know that they've won due to the money. But that's not always important. What matters most is they have won. You don't buy the victory directly. You buy the means to achieve the victory. But this doesn't mean the victory, at least for the player, is any less sweet. So psychologically, the two strongest points that pay to win can be exploited by are games where challenging content has repeatedly beaten the player and then you can beat the content by using your bought power, and multiplayer games where you have another human to win against. Combine these two and you are hitting that psychological sweet spot of monkey brain wants to win. And developers know this. In fact, the mobile phone city builder Clash of whatever genre thrives on this. So the foundations are people want to win, to beat the challenge of a game, even if that means making the challenge far easier than it should be, and many people still get the same thrill of victory if they achieve the victory, even if they've paid for it. The final development aspect of this is every single level of this scale that we're about to look at will force developers to design their game differently, even if they don't want to. Imagine a complete video game as a line, from start to finish. And on that line, you've got everything in the game. Levels, weapons, secrets, it's all there. The complete package, start to finish. This is how a complete game should look, from Tetris to Ocarina of Time to Baldur's Gate 3. The line of the game is full, and when a player has bought it and when they play it, they get all of it. Remember this, because it will matter. Now, I mentioned earlier about Western and Eastern gaming cultures, and the hatred toward paying to win is a much more Western thing. Western gamers, mostly the USA and Europe, value skill in the game itself and mastery of the mechanics, and as such, they don't like pay to win essentially overriding someone's skill with someone else's money. But over in China and Japan, the culture is more accepting of pay to win, as the view is work hard, play hard, and the money earned from working can indeed and should go into your playing. So spending money on gaining power in a game is not only fair, but encouraged. You worked for that money. You are just choosing to see its benefits in the game instead of other areas of your life. Other players could choose to do this. They just don't. That's their fault. Now, when you reduce the time you have to game, then that time becomes far more valuable, and you don't want to spend that limited time playing at weaker, lower, or more boring levels. You want to be powerful, strong, to play the challenging, fun content, and with the continued popularity of internet cafes in the East, paying to boost your character's power and win is seen as normal. Now, for some of the designs I'll be discussing, the example games I'll be using are single-player games, and why would pay-to-win apply there? How would you win in a single-player game? That's entirely up to you. You're not competing. And while it's true that many people only consider winning to be important when other human players are involved, the reason I'm using these games is to show an example of the effect that money-first design can have on a player's experience even when alone, knowing it will only get more extreme when other people get involved. If you and I both bought Tomb Raider back on the PlayStation 1, we would be experiencing the same game. Even if we played it in different ways, extra money wouldn't change the gaming experience we both had access to. But if we both bought Deus Ex Human Revolution back when that launched, our experiences would be different depending on if we bought the Standard Edition or the Augmented Edition, the latter containing exclusive quality of life updates like automatic door hackers, extra weapons, or starting the player with extra in-game money so you can upgrade things faster. Even if Deus Ex is a single-player game, by spending a little bit more money to purchase the better edition, you are given the tools to win a little bit easier than someone who didn't do that. There used to be this unspoken agreement that buying a single-player game would give everyone who bought that game the same challenge of the game, but that's just not true anymore. So now, let's get to that 10-point scale. Remember, this isn't so much a linear put your game here scale, it's a checklist of increasing severity. And one game might hit multiple of these points. In general, the more boxes you tick, the more pay to win the game is. We'll discuss the mechanical effects of a player's experience of each point as we get to it. There is also the very real chance as a game ages, it will start to tick more and more of these boxes as the developers add in more and more pay-to-win aspects. Let's start at level 1. You can't pay to win at all, because there's just no way to give the game money beyond the original purchase. This would be your early standalone console games, where the hardware just didn't have the ability to deliver DLC or updates. If you bought Tekken on the PlayStation, you had Tekken. You couldn't pay to make a kick do extra damage. It was you versus your opponent, and you both had the whole game. Even the early MMOs like EverQuest or Vanilla WoW could have been placed here back in the day. You buy the game, pay the sub, and then you've got access to all of it. But as we'll see, that has changed. The game design line here is just full, complete, start to finish. Here's the entire game. Enjoy. But then we go to level 2, which is where money only buys non-mechanical, non-gameplay related stuff, such as in-game cosmetics or client-side UI overhauls. The best example of this, and also conveniently where all the microtransaction junk started, is the Elder Scrolls Oblivion and that stupid horse armor. You can indeed throw money at Oblivion and get the horse armor, or you could back in the day, but it was purely cosmetic, and that's an argument used by many people to defend pay-to-win systems. They say it's okay, it's just cosmetic, and that might indeed be true, but this is where the designers have to start making hard choices. Because to the players, yes, it's just aesthetic, but to the designers, it's now a choice of which aesthetics are worth it. If you're selling cosmetics in your game, then you now have a vested interest to keep the cool-looking stuff for the cosmetic shop exclusively. So remember that line of complete game. When you have a cosmetic shop, it's not a complete line anymore. There's a little bit missing. Not mechanically, aesthetically. It's still missing, locked behind
Just like
a little bit
BDO.
more money. So if cosmetics and a complete experience matter to you, This is where pay to win starts, because you're not winning until you have the coolest looking armor, and you can't get that without paying. This is the moment game design changes from how much can we add to how much can we remove and sell as extra. And that point is expanded on in the What Went Wrong with Gaming video. I'll link that below. On to level 3. Money can indeed buy power now, but it is easily matched with very little time invested, so any advantage is small or short-lived. Imagine you start playing a game, but you discover you can buy a really powerful weapon for just a few pounds or a few dollars more. That would feel unfair. But what if the same weapon was also found in the game itself about 10 minutes into the game? Would you still feel it is as unfair? A good example here is what happens when you buy all the expansion packs for Fallout New Vegas. You start the base game with a grenade launcher and more medical supplies, which means you are absolutely starting with an advantage, but you will lose the advantage quickly as you find weapons that are better. It's a similar situation with tiered subscriptions giving you percentage bonuses in online games, like how you can become a higher tiered member on EverQuest and gain small boosts. They're not game-breaking, but they do save time. And ultimately, if you and someone else play for the same amount of time, you won't be able to compete. The person with the advantage will win. Now, this kind of pay-to-win can be easily beaten with a bit more time invested from the non-paying player. But notice how we've just started that slippery slope, justifying how it's not that bad. If you have to justify why something isn't as bad as people think, you're accepting that people have a natural belief that it is bad, and you're now on the defensive, which isn't a great place to be. We see this in MMORPGs where you can buy early boosts and buffs, maybe 1 week of extra power, or a unique pet which has an early game buff but only applies if you're under a certain level. It is an undeniable early game advantage, but it becomes less important as time goes on. If we take the line of game design, this time a paying player isn't starting at the start. They're starting a little bit ahead, or they're playing with an early game advantage, so the early game sections is easier for them. They are undeniably winning, but only in the short term and only in the early game. On to pay to win level 4. Money can now buy system-based advantages which don't directly interact with other players but do make your life easier. Money does not remove challenging gameplay directly, but does make the other stuff around it easier. This is more mechanically complicated, so imagine a game where you can only carry one weapon at a time, but then you bump into a boss which needs another weapon to kill it, meaning you've got to drop your current weapon, no matter how good it may be, and find another. That would be irritating. But what if you could pay to have the ability to hold 2 or 3 weapons? Suddenly, you've made your gameplay experience more efficient and more streamlined. You've not changed the difficulty of the boss itself, you still need to kill it, but by improving other systems around it, you've made your experience far smoother. This would be games which limit bank space, like Path of Exile selling stash tabs, or Neverwinter Online letting you summon a bank from anywhere provided you are a high enough VIP subscription level. And don't get me wrong, I love Path of Exile. I think it's the best online action RPG around today, and for a free game I can understand why this purchase is here. But the ability to buy more bank tabs is absolutely a non-moment-to-moment gameplay mechanical advantage, and this will be used by many people to claim the game is pay to win. With this in mind, we can take the line of game design and say it would now look like this, with the normal gameplay line being much more awkward to navigate and money smoothing out the experience. You don't lose anything here, it's just a bit harder to get to unless you pay. Developers know this, and they're often encouraged by the higher-ups to make the systems in the game a little bit more awkward than they need to be, just so they can sell you the simplified solution. And in a horribly beautiful touch of prophecy, while I was literally writing this script, Dragon's Dogma 2 released. A single-player game which touted itself as a return to the more brutal age of the RPG with no fast travel, except there is fast travel, but you have to pay for it. Microtransaction pay for advantage in a single-player game. And this is why I mentioned that money-first design will affect everything. Multiplayer games and single-player games, slowly but surely. Pay to win level 5. Now we're getting to where money in can actually skip chunks of the game, or boost you past non-challenging but tedious sections, giving you a big time advantage, like level boosts in almost every MMORPG. Leveling a character in an RPG or MMO game usually isn't hard, it's just time-consuming. The only real challenge to collecting 10 bear asses 50 times is finding the time to kill 500 bears. And the annoying thing is the fun gameplay, the
Ah,
bosses, the dungeons, the
falling
raids, the
asleep.
exciting modern stuff is usually
Jeez.
more toward the end of the game.
So
And
annoying.
killing those 500 bears is a required task to get there. So what if you could just pay to not do that? Level boosts in MMORPGs, limited time experience boosts, level up tokens,
Oh,
any game where you can pay any amount of money to skip the early, non-challenging content fits in here. You're not paying to skip the fun stuff, you're paying to get to it faster. And this is a massive time advantage over players not doing that. Now, the consequences for game design here should be rather obvious. If we take the gameplay line, it now looks
no.
like this, with the start of the line being deliberately
Crap. I literally died because I fell asleep. Oh my goodness, dude. So annoying. Oh my gosh. Well, that will wake you up, won't it? My goodness, dude. I hate losing crystals when you freaking die, dude. So annoying, bro.
boring and dull to encourage the player to pay a little extra to skip it and get to where the game, realistically, should actually start. This is especially egregious in MMORPGs with class-locked characters. If you want to play multiple classes at higher level content, you're now either putting in hundreds of hours doing the same early game content repeatedly, or paying to get to the end game fun bit quickly to actually enjoy the game with your friends. This is unfortunately why many MMORPGs have busy work quests lower level. They don't want you to do them. They want you to pay to skip them. On to level 6. Money now directly equals power, but it will reach a cap that another non-paying player could realistically catch up with if they exclusively and heavily play that game. A good example of this level would be Neverwinter Online, or even Black Desert Online. In many online games, you need to upgrade your weapons, armor, or abilities, and doing this usually needs reagents which you can get by playing the game, but they are slow to gather, or there is a chance that your attempted upgrade will fail, wasting your reagents. Thankfully, you can either buy more of them, or buy insurance items which guarantees the upgrade succeeds, or saves your reagents if it fails. Now, these systems are technically available to free players as well, but only if they spend an absolutely insane amount of time playing that game alone and grinding away. You're talking multiple hours a day, every day of the week, maybe even on multiple characters. Playing nothing else, having no other hobbies, a free player would have to spend hours to achieve the same power or advantage a paying player could get within minutes. The main argument you'll hear against this being pay to win is how it's technically still possible for a free player to do. And yes, it is technically, theoretically possible. But practically, it's extremely unlikely. You'll hear people say, oh, this is actually just pay for advantage, not pay to win, because you're not gaining anything exclusive. You can still win. And I can understand that argument. But you must understand that being able to reach the highest power level in a game without the extreme time sink or the extreme risk of losing it all, that is not just an advantage, that is winning. This kind of advantage includes the ability to buy items which revive you after death, or revive your entire team if you fail at a boss. Even if you can buy those items in-game for absurd amounts of in-game gold, the ability to buy them for real money places them here. The only saving grace of this system is there is a cap. Weapons can be maxed out, levels can hit a total, and a paying player will, eventually, hit a ceiling and not be able to go any higher. So money will equal power to a cap. It's still massively pay to win, and the chance of a free-to-play player ever reaching the cap is absurdly low, but it is still, theoretically, possible. The game design line would now look like a game of snakes and ladders. There is a win condition, but free players only get one roll of the dice a day, and almost all of their squares are snakes. Paying here just gives you more dice rolls, more ladders, and fewer, if any, snakes. This is where arcade games sit. allowing more lives for more money. The money you put in is another chance to prove your skill, and the cap is actually beating the game. And now we get to level 7. Money directly equals linear, guaranteed power, and it will not reach a cap, essentially allowing unlimited money to buy unlimited power. Wallet versus wallet. The only way a non-paying player could even theoretically catch up is with unhealthy amounts of play or a team of people supporting them. This would be your mobile games, competitive city builders like Clash of Whatever, or those old Facebook games like Farmville. While back in level 6, money bought you power to a cap and then stopped, here in level 7, there is no cap. The power gain just continues. Yes, it gets absurdly expensive. It just keeps going. You can have more money, more power, more lives, more defense. No matter what an enemy player throws at you, you will always be able to potentially throw more money at it to survive. Can a free player beat a paying player in this scenario? Technically, yes, because the free player also has access to everything in the game. But the amount of time it would take to gather the same amount of resources is now approaching theoretical only. There's no practical way you'd be able to play long enough to compete with the higher paying players. This is where the pay for advantage people start to lose face, because it's very hard to defend this system as being anything else than pay to win. This is also when companies start selling power directly, like the RuneScape Bond, which can be sold for in-game gold, or the WoW token, which effectively works the same. Many years ago, games companies were heavily against real-world trading, but eventually they realized the best way to combat it was to join it and control it. So instead of watching the third-party websites get all of the money, they just started selling power in their own game themselves. This is one of the saddest if you can't beat them, join them realities of modern games as a service design. The company will sell you the game and will then sell you the power within it, because they know enough people will buy it. The game design line now looks like this. It's an unending line, but free players will only ever progress along it slowly, even at their most efficient. Paying here just jumps you ahead of others a certain amount. The line is endless. The finish line does not exist. All that matters is being the player that is furthest along, knowing at any moment someone could overtake you if they spend enough. The only real positive here is you know what you are getting for your money. There's no ambiguity. Yes, you could in theory spend £1 million, but you would also know exactly what you would get for that £1 million. But when you take away that guarantee, we reach level 8 of pay to win. Money in now becomes gambling to potentially gain power, but is not guaranteed. This would be your common gacha mechanics. Maybe the base game is free, maybe it's paid, but there will be a system in the game now where you can pay to potentially get more power, and the more you pay, the greater the chance. So why do I think this system is more insidious than the linear pay for guaranteed power? Well, it's because this system relies on gambling, and so it appeals to those with addictive personalities far more. It is still pay for power, yes, but the guaranteed advancement is replaced with the thrill of the gamble. Could be more, could be less. You could spend very little and gain a great deal. You could spend absolutely loads and gain nothing. You can't budget for the power
Guess that's the
gained,
reason why I
and this
probably
means
haven't
often
got
you end up
my
with far more people spending
try
far more
or
than they
my
intended,
pin
either due to the gambler's fallacy
accessory
or
because
the
I
sunk
keep
cost fallacy or just plain
dying from
old
falling
addiction.
asleep.
And
So I have to
game
use that
designers know
money
this, and they want to
to buy my
exploit it.
crystals back
At
that
this
I
point, the
lose.
pay-to-win nature is on full show, because the game design line now looks like a mess. So many game elements will be reshuffled, repurposed, or just straight up removed and only available in paid chance boxes, loot boxes, or gacha. Buying the base game now doesn't even really get you a full game. It just gets you a foundation, a framework designed to encourage you to spend more money to flesh out the frame. From EA wanting to give us a sense of pride and accomplishment by unlocking Vader, or RuneScape making us buy treasure hunter keys to open more chests and gain gold, experience, or exclusive equipment, down to FIFA's Ultimate Team needing endless card packs open to find the best player, and then that will reset the next FIFA game, because FIFA is just Genshin Impact for people who like middle-aged millionaires. And the reason games use gacha is because it works. FIFA's Ultimate Team made more money last year than almost any other video game. Once you add gambling to your game and give potential in-game advantages for real money, with more money meaning more chances, you're firmly within pay-to-win territory. The only positive about this level is technically, free players can, in theory, still access all of the content. Maybe they get 1 or 2 free packs or free spins a week. Or maybe the rare items from other players can be sold to free players for in-game money, which those players can earn. I mean, it would take more time than you would ever play the game for, potentially longer than the game's servers even remain online. But in theory, and theory alone, it is still possible. But then we reach level 9, where winning without money is not possible anymore, not even theoretically. Hello, Diablo Immortal. I did wonder when you'd be showing up. Back when Diablo Immortal launched, I made a rather thorough breakdown about exactly why it was anti-player. The video was called Diablo Immoral, and this example fits perfectly here. To level up your equipment in Diablo Immortal, you need legendary gems. How do you get those gems as a free player? You don't. You just quite simply don't. You can't get them, you have to pay. But does that mean there are effectively 2 games where paying players compete with other paying players and free players can play with free players to keep things fair? No, not at all. Of course it doesn't. Paying players absolutely get paired up with free players who have literally no way to get the same power level. And once each type of player has reached their theoretical maximum, paying players will dominate in PvP. Guaranteed. This is by design. This level of pay to win is much rarer because it loses the defense of, well, it's just pay for advantage. Free players can still do it because now the free players can't do it. When your pay-to-win system cannot be defended even by your most hardcore fans, you are in dangerous territory and you will burn up any goodwill you had with the public. We've looked before at how goodwill is a currency. You earn it when you do good things and you spend it when you do bad things. And pay-to-win of this level is one of the ultimate withdrawals of player goodwill. These games are few and far between because most developers either aren't greedy enough or aren't stupid enough to consider making them. You need to give yourself the theoretical defense of, well, technically a free player can still do it, while here they just straight up can't. The game design line now looks like this. There's just a hard gate in the middle which can only be opened with money. There is no way around it. Getting past this requires you to pay again. But that was only level 9. What the hell is level 10? Well, this is the more paradoxical level. Any game can go here depending on what you as an individual want from it, and what it as a game has decided to lock behind a paywall. I personally wouldn't consider Oblivion pay to win. But if you only want to play it with the horse armor on, and you bought the base game expecting access to everything in the game, then yeah, I guess to you that's now an additional payment that you need to make to be able to win the game in your mind. I would consider Diablo Immortal pay to win, but I was still able to have fun playing through the campaign with some friends, killing some bosses, and then moving on without paying anything. So I won my experience at that without paying. The issue here is just what you consider your own personal win state. I've known people refuse to even start games because they realized they'd never be world class without paying more money. But the strange reality is they were never going to be world class anyway. They didn't have the time or the inclination to be world class. They just saw that the very top levels of the game were unachievable and thought, no. I'm not slighting them for never going pro, but it's kind of like saying, I'll never be a professional footballer, so there's no point having a fun kick around in the park with my mates. In the world of gaming, for some people, the existence of any level of pay to win at all, even if they wouldn't reach it, will put them off playing the game entirely. I've had friends play gacha games, spend very little, enjoy their time, and move on. They weren't the best in the world, but they considered it a win in their book. They didn't want more. Did they pay to win? Yes, but they were happy with what they paid for. Did they win at the game by being the absolute best? No, but that wasn't what they were going for in the first place. People may tell you that game isn't pay to win, it's just cosmetics. But if you only play for fashion and having cool cosmetics is your own personal win condition, that game will be pay to win for you specifically. Ultimately, almost every live service game or every online game, MMORPG, competitive multiplayer, gacha, or mobile game will have some systems where you can give the game more money for more stuff. And if that stuff is important to you, you're going to see it as pay to win. If it isn't important to you, then you won't. Maybe you've only got a limited amount of time to play per week, and you know that playing without paying is going to keep you stuck in the dull, boring, repetitive bit for ages. Or going into an open PvP match would be pointless because you would never stand a chance against people with more time or more money. So maybe you spending money is just leveling the playing field to make it fun. Or maybe you'll only ever do PvP against your friends and both agree to not spend money, making it equal the entire time. Winning doesn't always mean being top of the leaderboards or having the best stuff in the game. Sometimes it's a more personal goal. But if any element of that goal is locked behind a paywall, it will affect you. Now, I'm not defending these insidious development practices. I don't agree with them. But I am saying the is it pay to win argument is much more nuanced than yes or no. There are some games you can say definitely no, it's not. And some which are undoubtedly yes, it is. But there's far more games in between, in that grey area, that personal area. So when you're trying to evaluate a game, see how many of the levels of pay-to-win scale it fits into and score it from that, because it will differ from person to person. But ultimately, when you look at the modern state of pay-to-win in all games, it all again boils down to that stupid horse armor. My God, Bethesda, do you have any idea the horrors you were unleashing on the world when you did that? Did you know what you would do? It all began here. Patient zero of the state of gaming is that horse. This is all your fault, Todd. Cheers for watching. Another massive thank you to all the supporters on Patreon and Twitch who keep the channel alive. You can support from only £1 a month. Check the video description for links to the Patreon, Twitch, Twitter, and our Discord. And as always, have a great day.
Ooh, dude, I am struggling. I don't know why I'm struggling.
What is an MMORPG? A question
Why do people play MMO solo? I don't know. Let's find out.
asked by scholars and philosophers alike. How do we define this genre? This question is actually so volatile and divisive in the MMO community, it really needs its own series of videos split over several specific topics. So let's do that. Let's dive into this fascinating genre and really ask, what is it? From the acronym MMORPG itself to the games we know as MMORPGs to the games we describe as MMOs which aren't quite. What are we actually talking about? Quick note, this video is kindly sponsored by Guild Wars 2, which is definitely an MMORPG, unlike Guild Wars 1, which is an online RPG. What's the difference? Let's find out. As always, thank you to the supporters on Patreon who allow me to keep making these videos. Several YouTubers far smarter than me have already made excellent videos examining what an MMORPG even is, from breaking down the acronym to analysing games that we would commonly describe as MMORPGs. And while we've made some advancement into working out what the hell this genre even is, there's only two things we really, as a community, agree on. One, Steam doesn't know what an MMO is, because the MMO tagged games are always quite strange. And two, an MMO is a game in which there is a fishing minigame. That's about as far as we've got. As for why fishing specifically, Adam Millard has a brilliant video on why so many games turn to that exact thing. If you're interested in game design, go and give it a watch. I'll link it in the description. But beyond fishing, what is an MMORPG?
I didn't even know that was the thing.
The acronym stands for Massively Multiplayer Online Role-Playing Game. So I wanted to break this down and examine each bit individually. How massive? Multiplayer in what context? Is it always online? And what level of freedom is given within the RPG aspect? Some games we would know as MMORPGs aren't necessarily massive. Some of them don't even require multiplayer. Some of them aren't even always online. But while I was writing a brief outline of all the important points I wanted to cover in this rather long topic, I saw this tweet by Mrs. Sticks, retweeted by MMOBite. The original tweet reads, "Why do we like MMOs so much if we keep playing it like a single player?" And MMOBite replies, "It's such an unusual direction to take the genre, making it solo-friendly, less massively multiplayer. I think soon we're going to see MMORPGs simply become online role-playing games." The interesting aspect of that reply is he left out the MM, massively multiplayer. So if encouraging solo play of a multiplayer game is enough to justify changing the acronym, then the multiplayer element must be a core design pillar of this genre. This seemed like a good place to start exploring. I'm not saying MMOBite is right or wrong in his reply, it's just a solid starting point. Because is it a different direction? Or has this aspect actually always been there? Before we look at whether older MMORPGs even allowed solo play, never mind encouraged it, we have to ask a simple question of why would someone want to play solo? MMORPG, massively multiplayer, a genre which prides itself on giving you the ability to play with millions of other people, players from all around the globe. Why would anyone choose to take on a multiplayer adventure on their own? Well, the answer's pretty simple. It's because you want to. The gameplay of an MMO is usually a fantastical adventure, broken down by slow, monotonous grinding between the exciting bits, leveling skills or killing the same enemy again and again. And while it can be nice to have company during these long stretches of repetition, it's not always wanted. People enjoy doing lots of things by themselves. I like real-time strategy games, but I also like playing against the computer. I like Unreal Tournament against bots. I like painting Warhammer by myself. All things which are considered boring and repetitive by some, and which could likely be improved by sharing the experience with someone else. But here's the thing. I do share those experiences with other people when I want to. If I want to play multiplayer games with other people, I will. Or if I want to paint models with other people, I will. The important thing is, I have the choice. When someone says they enjoy playing MMO games solo, it doesn't necessarily mean they avoid all human contact at all costs. It usually means they prefer to enjoy the game either alone or with a closer, more specific group of friends, because those friends enjoy the game in the same way they do, either focusing on the lore, the mechanics, or min-maxing.
Good old
it's
solo.
important to not simply have a large player base for the sake of having a large player base if you don't actually interact with them. A fun play group who enhance the game for you is worth far more. Playing an MMO can often be a relaxing hobby, while constant interaction with people can be a draining hobby in both the real world and the virtual. Sometimes you just want to come home from a day surrounded by people and go and exist in a fantastical virtual world by yourself. Yes, there are other people also in this world, but that's actually a calming element of it, because you don't need to spend energy interacting with them, it's just nice to have them there. Other players are acting as free-thinking, feeling background characters, framing your own adventure, lending the world weight and reality. Knowing that your actions affect a living world without the emotional effort of constantly needing to be social in that world is enjoyable. Playing an MMO with a group means you will have certain expectations, requirements of you.
Oh gosh, what that again?
Any chat that's going on or play your class. You have a role to fulfill and you can't let your team down, and that's pressure. Sometimes you want to experience the gameplay of an MMORPG, the world, the music, the characters, the lore, the story, or the mechanics, without that pressure of feeling like you need to fulfill a role in a team. You can have the game on in the background while you watch a film, watch Netflix, read a book, or even do some work. Or most
those little arrow things, they hurt.
now, which is watching some YouTube videos. It can be nice to experience the MMORPG without the pressure that being in a team puts on you. Whatever your favorite MMO is, it can always be played in the background. And if you aren't playing an MMO right now, consider downloading this video's sponsor, Guild Wars 2. This is the second video of mine that Guild Wars 2 have sponsored quite recently, which makes me think the management team have finally found the marketing team hiding in a long-forgotten office somewhere or just playing jumping puzzles all day and are demanding they actually start doing their job and sponsoring some YouTubers or something. I've played Guild Wars 2 since it launched all the way back in 2012, and it's been one of the few MMOs I've installed on every PC I've had since then, and finally, after like 5 years of coming soon, it's actually released on Steam. They've even released 2 very positive reviews. The latest expansion, End of Dragons, brings a ton of new content without invalidating the previous expansions, Heart of Thorns and Path of Fire, but you don't need to buy anything to try the game. There is a massive free trial. The base game is free with no time limit, and if you do like it, it is a one-time purchase with no monthly sub. Once you own Guild Wars 2, you own it. And given the amount of hours I've got out of this game, Guild Wars 2 is probably the best value money I've ever spent on a video game. To celebrate the Steam launch, there's a link in the description. You can sign up, get a code, and grab the game on Steam, and then if you want, you can redeem the code for an experience boost pack, some karma boosting, and a 10-slot bag with a mini pet. This all saves you about $10, and it's free, so there's no reason not to. There's a new player guide on the website, although the in-game tutorial is actually really good. There's great build variety in the classes, and the mount system is so good it is now the standard by which other games are to be judged. Now, regular viewers will know that I don't accept sponsorships unless I can personally vouch for the product, and honestly, Guild Wars 2 is just a really good MMORPG game with a great deal of content that every player should at least try. Right, back to talking about solo MMO gameplay. When I play MMORPGs on stream, I often have people following me around, but I would still consider myself a mostly solo player, despite the fact I enjoy dungeons and team-based events. So how does that work? Well, the simple fact that I'm playing with people doesn't mean that I'm interacting with them or connecting to them in any meaningful way, and I think it's this lack of meaningful connection to other people that people often confuse with the lack of multiplayer elements. There is a long-held belief that newer MMORPGs are pushing people more towards solo-focused play. You exist in a world with other people, but you don't necessarily interact with them. I've even made a video called Social to Solo, where I look at how the design philosophy has changed over the years, allowing people to experience the games solo. But were older games actually more cooperative? Did they demand more teamwork, or do people simply remember them as more cooperative because hanging out with people online was novel for the time, so people did that aspect more? The massively multiplayer part is a major point of contention within the MMORPG community. What is massive? It's not quantified, it's far too vague. From games designers to players, we don't know what you want massive to count as. 1,000 players? 10,000? 100,000? A million? Or 10 million? If you count a million players as massive, can I have a million people on my friends list? Could I have an ignore list a million players long? Will there ever be a zone where you could actually have a million players all at one time? Could you even interact with a million if you wanted to? If you have a number higher than the amount of players a single player could realistically be expected to engage with at any one time, is that enhancing your player base, or is that simply padding it out? How big is massive, and how big does massive need to be for the players to actually notice? Old school RuneScape has hundreds of thousands of active players, so it could rightfully be called a massively successful game, and it's definitely multiplayer, but each individual
Old
world
school
holds up to
RuneScape.
2,000 people, meaning even if you had every single player on a given world in the same space, you'd only be interacting with a tiny fraction of the total player base at any one time, and you wouldn't likely be able to form any meaningful connection with any one of them in the mass of players. The Elder Scrolls Online has its mega servers, shards, all existing simultaneously, but instead of showing you every player around you, it has phasing, where you'll always see enough players for the world to feel full, but never so many you feel overwhelmed, which makes it easier to form connections. But is this still massive if you're experiencing a curated version of the player base? Is the word massive more about the reality of who you interact with in the game, or the greater community around the game? If the majority of your game is dungeons and raids with say 5, 10 or 25 people in a raid, are you actually interacting with 25 people? Or are you interacting with thousands of people in groups of 25 at a time? Or are you interacting at all? Does a dungeon run with no connection to another player even count as interaction?
Whoa.
You're as close to a random player
Why
in a
in the
random group as
world?
you are to a stranger you walk
I
alongside
mean, so
while
hard.
walking through town, or someone sat 2 seats behind you on a roller coaster. Just because you're going on the same journey doesn't mean you're taking the journey together. MMOs are often broken down into the styles of theme park versus sandbox. Would going to a theme park alone count as interacting with everyone at the park? Could you say you've had a multiplayer experience? And should anyone be stopped having that experience if they are alone? Most often, it's less about the potential of who you could interact with and more about who you actually do interact with. A small group of 5 to 10 friends talking and adventuring together will feel a lot more social and connected than 500 players silently running the same dungeon again and again. Quality really does beat quantity when it comes to meaningful human interactions. Psychologists have even studied how many people we can actually feel connected to. It's known as Dunbar's number, and it's around 150 people. Any more and you simply cannot connect to them on an individual personal level, meaning even if your game does have a million billion players, only 150 of them may be close enough to you to be meaningful to play with. The massively part of the acronym can sometimes be a bit of a false selling point. Having a million players means nothing unless you're required to interact with all a million, and if you are, that's overwhelming. Having enough players to make your game feel fleshed out and full, but not too many to overwhelm, while still maintaining those personal relationships, is a good amount to aim for. The potential for connections is massive, but until the player chooses to realize those potentials and actually interact with and connect to people, it remains potential, not realized. Many modern MMO games are designed so you don't need to interact with people, but you can if you choose to. The potential is there, but it's not required. It's this change in design, this
10 more minutes.
facilitation of solo play in a genre which prides itself on multiplayer aspects that many people point to as the downfall of the genre. They say MMORPGs used to be games which needed player interaction and so forced those connections between players, resulting in long-term friendships, guilds, or clans. And now taking that away, the genre is weaker for it. And this is of course subjective, but I decided maybe I should go back and play an older MMORPG and see how that handles the facilitation of solo play to gather some information on this strange phenomenon. Now, I've played a lot of MMORPGs, some for thousands of hours, some for only a few, but most of them have allowed me to have a pretty decent solo experience, teaming up with people when I wanted to, playing alone when I wanted to, and I value this. MMORPGs often advertise themselves by saying you can have your own adventure, especially the sandbox games. Live your own way, forge your own path, and if I want that path to be alone, who occasionally teams up, that should be something I can choose to do. If you look at many of the modern MMO offerings, you'll see solo play is not only viable, but often encouraged. Old school RuneScape and RuneScape 3 both have their Iron Man mode, literally cutting off a layer of interaction with other players by removing trading, forcing you to survive this harsh world on your own. And most of the endgame bosses can be soloed. Indeed, when I spoke to Mod Kieran and Elena about the latest raid coming out, I asked specifically if they designed this to be solo possible, and they had. The Elder Scrolls Online has a solo-focused story with fully voice-acted cutscenes and lots of solo instances as you try
I actually
to
really
save
do like
Tamriel, and the
ESO.
world bosses are possible solo but incredibly tough. Guild Wars 2 is the same, a deep involving story with a vast majority of the game being solo-friendly. And when the grouping does happen, if it happens impromptu, it gets organised behind the scenes, so just by being near someone, you're automatically working toward the same goal as them, meaning you can now work together alone. Star Wars The Old Republic is one of the better single-player Star Wars games and Star Wars stories, which just happens to be online. It takes place in an online world with other players. Even the flashpoints, team-based dungeons, will supply you with AI-controlled NPCs to complete them if you don't have a team. Now, I'm not saying these games don't have multiplayer content. Old school RuneScape has Barbarian Assault, a minigame which needs a team. The Elder Scrolls Online has its dungeons. Guild Wars 2 has the PvP battlegrounds and the fractals. These games all have content which cannot be completed solo, but this isn't usually early game or story focused. These multiplayer experiences are usually extra, in addition to the main game. Indeed, Star Wars supplying AI NPCs to accompany solo players through dungeons by fleshing out the team is a mechanic I've been a big fan of for a long time. Allowing solo players to experience what your game has poured endless hours of design into is a good idea. It's the same reason I really like the henchman system in Guild Wars 1 a lot, but we'll get onto this later. So we can see that modern MMOs are mostly accessible to solo players, with the choice to connect to others if you want to. But let's go back and see how older MMOs handle this. I decided to go back and try and play EverQuest 1 on Steam, the live version, not the Project 99 original. I even streamed the whole thing on YouTube. The VOD is available to go back and watch if you want to. And I'll likely stream more because I actually really enjoyed EverQuest 1. It's janky in places and it's far too convoluted in others. It relies a lot on keyboard shortcuts and typing your interactions, and target enemy is bound to F8 and not tab, and it's hard to click through things, which threw me a little, but all in all, it's a very well-made game. Now, EverQuest released back in 1999, and it's not only still going, but it's still being actively
That's kind of
updated.
crazy.
It's had 28 expansions,
1999.
with the
1999 is
29th
still
planned
going.
for release in 2023.
What?
That is an insanely successful lifespan for an
Kind of
MMORPG.
crazy.
It is testament to the quality of the game that it still has an active player base. Now, EverQuest is often given as an example of an old-school, hardcore MMORPG. It's harsh, it's unforgiving. You need to rely on your team to survive, and that is indeed true. EverQuest is a hard game, both in gameplay and in the meta elements of the gameplay. Understanding the UI and navigating all the keyboard shortcuts will take you some time to learn. The thing with EverQuest is there's a lot of downtime between the gameplay moments. As a mage, you need to sit down to recover your mana, and this means as a fighter, you'll be waiting for the mage. There's a lot of moments where nothing is happening, and so you will talk to the players in your group. When EverQuest was big in 1999 and 2000, you didn't have Netflix. You didn't have a second monitor to watch YouTube on. You would focus entirely on the game, and therefore you would find the fun within the game, which, for the majority of the game, was talking to other people. So when I played EverQuest, I decided to read all the classes, and what really stood out to me was the description of the Necromancer class. In character creation, the class is described as: Necromancers are a very self-sufficient class and often choose to adventure alone, though they can provide great value to a group as well. The Necromancer is an excellent choice for the independent player who enjoys a wide variety of abilities. On the EverQuest wiki, the class is described as one of the best soloing classes throughout the game. Now, EverQuest has seen many changes throughout the years. I assumed maybe this was a modern update, but there's a version of the game known as Project 99 which emulates the original experience without any of the quality of life upgrades. And the Project 99 wiki entry for the Necromancer describes it as such, the Necromancer is very independent. Few support classes are able to offer anything that the Necromancer does not already have, and items and gear do not carry the same importance as they do for other classes. The Wiki Class Highlights section even says, Necromancers are one of the most independent of all classes, being designed with a number of self-only spells that certain other casters can cast on others. Example, self-only invisibility and self-only evacuation, making it a prime choice for those that plan to solo the majority of their careers. However, because of the wide variety of abilities, many not gained until higher levels, a Necromancer must constantly learn new ways to play their class. So even back in 1999, before the popular argument that MMORPGs were becoming too solo-friendly, in the game that many consider one of the grandfathers of the genre, there was a class specifically designed to allow people to adventure alone. When I played Meridian 59, considered the first 3D MMORPG, the opening crypt tutorial section has a door which requires 2 people to open. You must pull 2 levers at the same time. And while it is technically possible to do solo with almost frame-perfect inputs, it's not a required room. It simply leads to an optional boss and some low-level loot. In fact, nothing about Meridian 59 demands you team up to play. How about Guild Wars 1, considered by many to not be an MMORPG, but instead, including by themselves, an online role-playing game? How does this differ? Well, in Guild Wars 1, the world is broken down into maps, both safe or dangerous, and the only times you will see other players in Guild Wars 1 is when you're all in a hub city or a safe outpost. When you travel outside of the city, you'll only ever see yourself or any other players you specifically teamed up with while you were in that safe area. So if you leave town without talking to another player, is the game going to force you to adventure solo? Well, no. There's an NPC henchman system. By the exits of any safe map, you'll find a row of henchmen you can invite to your team, and they'll fight by your side throughout the map, acting as regular players. In fact, once you're a higher level, you can actually turn your own characters into mercenaries, meaning they will now be available as NPC supports when you play on other characters. So you're supported by your own old characters. And it's this lack of open-world player interaction which leads people to describe Guild Wars 1 as an online RPG, not necessarily a massively multiplayer online RPG. Even Final Fantasy XIV is considered an RPG first with an MMO second, meaning it's focused more on the personal journey of the player through its story with multiplayer elements added on, such as the dungeons and the raids, and then the daily roulette allowing you to find a team quickly to receive your reward for playing. But just look at the memes. People say the end game of almost any MMO, including Final Fantasy XIV and Guild Wars 2, is fashion. Just chatting in Limsa Lominsa, or trying to turn yourself into a light bulb. Extremely social things to do. Socializing is alive and well in many MMOs because the choice is there, while it's also not being forced onto the solo connection player if they don't want to. This means the MM part of the acronym, massively multiplayer, seems to relate to both the player base size and the potential to interact with them in the game world at random, not the social need or demand to party up to experience the majority of the game. Yes, you can form connections with people in online games. You've always been able to. That aspect hasn't gone anywhere. You can still do that.
Gosh,
you just don't need to do it as frequently. People often say to me, yes, I know you can still do that, but older games encouraged it, so people did it more. And that might be true, but if people are doing something because they're pushed to do it without a choice, that doesn't necessarily mean they would do it if given the choice. In modern day MMOs, we see that choice exist more, and more players are choosing to play with smaller, closer-knit groups of friends. or refer to themselves as solo players. A playstyle which has always been on some level supported, but is now much, much more popular. So have MMORPGs become less social? Not really. All of the elements to be social are still there, there's just other stuff to do as well. Unlike the downtime in EverQuest when you would sit down to restore your mana and therefore you had nothing else to do but talk to someone, you now have hundreds of other things to do, both in and out of the game. Why play an MMORPG solo? Because you want to. At that exact moment, you maybe don't want to interact with people. You maybe don't want to be relied upon to play your role within a team. It doesn't mean that you won't interact with people in the future, or wait till your mates log on and join up with them. It doesn't mean that you won't talk to someone as they cut a tree down or mine a rock next to you. It just means that you have lots of other choices other than being social to distract you. It just means you want to exist within this multiplayer world as a single player for a short time. And there's nothing to stop you from doing that. And if you play an MMO solo, you're not playing it wrong. You're just enjoying your adventure your way.
Jeez, dude, it's so
As for that
annoying.
tweet, I think
Little arrow things are so
MMORPGs have
annoying.
always, to some players, been solo-focused online role-playing games that exist within a living world. The massively multiplayer bit was, to several players, more of the potential for social connection and not a demand to do so. And just like the potential was years ago, it's still there, it's just not as novel as it used to be. So people aren't specifically selling the games on the fact you can do that. The social players exist within guilds and clans, discords and forums. Still connected, just not chatty within the game itself. Modern MMOs do indeed have more systems
Almost
that
done.
facilitate easier solo play than ever before. But this isn't driving the games to become solo only. It's simply increasing the amount of choice in how you play. There's nothing stopping you teaming up, just like the old days, with a huge group of players and adventuring around together. But unlike the old days, there's now much more choice to not do that, and people are choosing that much more frequently. But how do you play? Are you a solo-only player? Are you social with everyone? Or do you prefer mostly solo play until your mates log on, where you'll team up with them? Let me know in the comments below. Another massive thank you to Guild Wars 2 for sponsoring this video. Use the link in the description to get the game and some cool free stuff. And as always, have a great day. Fresh start servers, or classic servers of current MMORPGs.
Cool, cool. Not bad considering I literally fell asleep. I kept falling asleep. I died once. I gotta buy a freaking another crystal. All right. Well, YouTube, I'm gonna peace out because I am falling asleep. Hope you have a good night. Peace, peace.